Hundreds of truckers are en route to Ottawa to protest the government's vaccine mandate for truck drivers. Truckers crossing the border have to be vaccinated or they will have to quarantine. Critics say the rule will affect already strained supply chains. So should the government be more flexible? Omar Alghabra is the Minister of Transport for Canada. He offered to speak to us about this issue. Minister Alghabra is in Mississauga. Thanks for joining us once again on the program, sir.
It's good to be with you, Neil.
Well, as you know, the Conservatives are saying your government should be looking for alternatives, rapid tests, for example, to try to accommodate unvaccinated truck drivers. Is that a reasonable alternative, something you might consider?
Neil, from the beginning, we committed to Canadians to do everything we can to protect their health and safety, but also to protect our economy. And we have all recognized that COVID-19 has had the most impact or the biggest impact on our supply chain. Over the last year and a half, we've seen disruptions of our supply chain caused by COVID, either because of lockdowns, either because of labor absenteeism. And our plan all along is to defeat COVID and end the pandemic as quickly as possible so we can deal with many of those challenges.
But would you consider alternatives?
There are long-standing challenges to supply chains, but one of them is making sure that the workers in the sector are safe and are vaccinated. We have passed a mandate to federal workers last summer. We've also put a similar mandate to the transportation sector for air, rail, and marine. And last November, we announced that truck drivers who are crossing into the U.S. will need to be vaccinated. And I want to emphasize this. We've given truck drivers a long leeway because we understand the delicacy of their job, and they have stepped up. They have been there for Canadians, delivering the goods that Canadians want, but also they've gotten vaccinated. On average, the latest data that I got, 90% of truck drivers have been vaccinated. That's why we think now is the right time. If we really want to address the root cause of the supply chains issue, is to really make sure that everybody within the supply chain network is vaccinated.
Are you able to tell us, Minister, how many cases have been detected in truckers crossing the border?
Typically in the past, we made an exemption for truck drivers from being tested. However, truck drivers are just like the rest of the population. A vaccinated truck driver has a 50% chance of being less hospitalized if they're vaccinated. A vaccinated truck driver has less chances of being infected. So it's really based on science. It's based on data that applies to the population. And we've worked with truck drivers before, and we'll continue to work with truck drivers after. But what we're doing right now is for the protection of truck drivers, but also for the protection of our supply chains and our economy.
As you know, PHAC data suggests travel accounts for less than 1% of cases. Keeping that in mind and keeping something that I think truckers might say, or others who know a little bit about the trucking industry, it's a pretty solitary, solo endeavor. Why is it important, given that PHAC statistic and given the nature of being a truck driver, and generally speaking, of course, why is it necessary?
So, Neil, I don't know if you agree with me or not. I know a lot of people believe that the biggest disruption to our supply chains is COVID. And also, all experts agree that the best way to deal with COVID is through vaccination. So what we are doing, and we have been rolling out these vaccination requirements over different sectors at different times. Now is the time, particularly given that truck drivers have stepped up and have been getting vaccinated, is to encourage the remaining minority of truck drivers to get vaccinated. And it's also important that we are synchronizing with the United States, who are also requiring truck drivers who are crossing the borders to be fully vaccinated.
It sounds like you're not that worried about this convoy, even optically, or this what you say is a small group, a minority of unvaccinated. But are you willing to concede, perhaps, Minister, that the way the government has handled this file, the miscommunication recently about whether they would actually have to be vaccinated, the miscommunication that went out, that's perhaps contributing to the frustration right now of people in this industry, some people in this industry?
Let me, Neil, just say that I am concerned about the supply chain challenges that have existed for the last year and a half. And other than mandating vaccines. I'm hosting a summit along with my colleagues next Monday to bring key stakeholders in the supply chain sector to discuss long-standing supply chains issues. What about investment? What about regulation?
But that's not what I asked you, sir. I asked you
I just
if you're
want to be clear.
no, I know you've said what you wanted to say about that your focus is supply chains and you don't feel and COVID is what is impacting them. What I'm asking is, would you accept that perhaps some of how this government has handled this file is contributing to the frustration of some of these truck drivers?
Neil, I will acknowledge that I regret the unfortunate error that happened last week for about 12 to 16 hours. Having said that, our government has been consistent since the day we announced the mandate last November, 2.5 months ago. We've been consistent. We haven't been saying, oh, give us time to think about it, or we're not sure what we're going to do. For the last 2.5 months, we've been consistently telling everybody in the industry that there will be a mandate for vaccines for truck drivers crossing the border. There was a regrettable miscommunication for about 16 hours or 12 hours that we clarified immediately, and I regret it, of course. But these type of things happen, and we're acting swiftly to address them, but also working with the industry on ensuring that the supply chains remains fluid and resilient.
What's the best way, do you think, to get this group of folks on board with the vaccine mandate? Is there a way to change their minds?
Look, I will always, and our government will always remain committed to having an honest conversation with Canadians. There are Canadians who are perhaps hesitant to get vaccinated for a variety of reasons. We're committed to providing them with answers to encourage them to get vaccinated. There are, unfortunately, a very small number of people who are anti-vaxxers and who are unwilling to listen to science and public health experts. And I want to encourage my colleagues in all parties, including the Conservative parties, not to undermine the unanimous scientific community's message that vaccine is the best way out of the pandemic. So I would encourage our Conservative colleagues, first, to get vaccinated, second, to speak all together in one voice to encourage everybody to get vaccinated.
Minister Alghabra, we will leave it there. I do thank you for coming on the program, making that offer to come on the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.